This is a folio edition of The Wind in the Willows that my sister actually, oh, almost dropped it. Hello, how is it going? I am doing a good old-fashioned book tag today. Yana from Modern Ajima very kindly tagged me, so let's just get straight into it. This is the Judging by Their Covers book tag, and I didn't expect picking books for this to be as hard as it was. I've sort of realized, having gone through all of the books on my shelf to find picks for these questions, that pretty much 90% of what I own is either classics or children's books, which means most of the covers are like paintings or whatever Penguin decides to put on their covers, or illustrations that you see on children's books. I also realized that I really struggled to separate the book aesthetically from the actual story within it. Like, my fondness for the books I have on my shelf is half because I think they look pretty, but I've also realized it's half because I just love the stories and I associate their covers so strongly with their stories now that I found it really hard to objectively look at whether a cover was aesthetically pleasing or not. So anyway, I think I have quite an eclectic mix. We'll start off with the first question, which is, what is the best color combo? I have kind of cheated with this one because I have a whole collection of color combos that I think are really pretty. This is a series of Nancy Mitford novels in their sort of most recent Penguin edition, I think, aside from like the recent TV series cover. I remember the first time I saw these, I just wanted them. I needed them on my shelf. And with the recent closure of Book Depository, I finally just spent the money and bought the rest that I didn't have. So I think I have all of them now in this series. The 4 books in the Pursuit of Love sort of series, and then these 2 other ones. One is a Christmas novel, Christmas Pudding, and one is Wigs on the Green, which I haven't read yet. But I just love each and every one of these, the way the colors go together and the patterns. I think they're so aesthetically pleasing. I want them as wallpaper, and I think they kind of evoke the styles and patterns of the 30s, which is generally when these books are set. To me, they really sort of bridge the line between modern aesthetics and the aesthetics of the time in which they were written, which I think is very clever. So the next question is best typography, and I picked L.A. Woman by E. Babbitts simply because the typography is the cover of this book. There is nothing else on the cover but the title and a novel by E. Babbitts. Annoyingly, my copy has some scratches on it from the annoying sticker that came with this copy. But I think it's very clever of them to have only words on the title and for those to be as aesthetically pleasing as they are. I really like a thick font, as you can probably tell by the font that I usually use on the thumbnails of my videos. And I very much like the color combo of this book as well. I assume you can probably get all of E. Babbitt's books in this kind of cover, which would be nice, I think, to have a collection if that is the case. I probably should have looked that up before filming this video. The next question is best simple cover, and I'm very much cheating with this one because I picked the classic orange Penguin Classics. This is my favorite book, Jane Eyre, which I have always had in an orange classic, and I've never thought about getting a different version because I love the story so much that I love the fact that the cover did not in any way influence me towards the book. The emphasis with these covers is the fact that these are all classics and so should be able to stand on their own merit, I suppose, without a pretty cover. I am a great lover of old Penguin classics. I do love ones with illustrations and paintings on them very much, but there is something about a Penguin classic that is exciting because it feels like a window into the past, and you can kind of suppose that these books all have some kind of merit to them because otherwise why would Penguin be preserving them? Obviously that's a whole nother discussion about what gets decided to be a classic, or rather who decides what gets to be a classic. I think these are iconic for a reason because they are so simple but also so eye-catching. You can always spot one on the shelf. Next question is best end pages, and I picked a children's book for this one. This is Penny Pollard's Passport by Robin Klein. Robin Klein is my favourite Australian children's author. I think she is such an amazing writer and depicts a particular kind of Australian culture in a very accurate way, I think. Penny Pollard's Diary is the first one in this series. These books are very famous in terms of Australian children's books because I guess she was considered a very relatable character when she was written, I think, in the 80s. What makes them so unique is that they are done as collages. So there's lots of writing, but there are also lots of photos and drawings and things in them, and bits where the publishers have actually taken photos of stuff and made actual collages. So this one is about her trip to London and is written, I think, mainly in the form of letters, but there's a school assignment there. I think there's a diary as well. So it's all just different ways that she might actually physically write stuff, which probably also helped to make it really accessible for children because it really felt realistic that this girl would be writing this kind of thing. I don't have the whole series in these like big hardback, but I do have this one from an op shop, and the end papers look like that. Incredibly iconically British from the 80s, I would say, or particularly Australian tourist in England from the 80s. These are very cute books. I would love to have the whole series in this same collection. The next question is best map, and this was the easiest one because of course it's going to be Swallows and Amazons by Arthur Ransom. All of these books in this series have maps in them, of course, because if you are an explorer like these children are in this story, you need to draw a map. And so this edition has the map inside the front cover of the lake and all the islands and surrounds that they explore within the story. What's lovely about it is it adds to the sense of adventure because in this story, these children are kind of pretending to be explorers while they are just children hanging out on an island. But it also does help you, while reading the story, know where everything actually is. The next question is best naked hardcover. I really don't have many hardcover books. So this was pretty much the only one that could work for this question. This is a folio edition of The Wind in the Willows that my sister actually, almost dropped it, that my sister actually found in an op shop and then I sort of took from her. I think this is very pretty. It has an illustration from inside the book and lots of gold leaf on a lovely green. Would also work for the spine question that we'll come up to. This one would also work for the best end pages as well because it has this lovely drawing by Charles Van Sandwyck apparently, and I assume there's lots of illustrations inside as well. I've never actually read this edition, and I'm trying to think if I've even ever read Wind in the Willows. I think I have once, but I've watched the many adaptations so many times that I never felt the need to actually read the book. The next question is best back cover, and this was pretty much impossible because none of the back covers of any of the books I have are that exciting, but I did find this one, which is another children's book. This is Old Bear Stories by Jane Hissey, and this is actually a book I found more recently in an op shop. This is not one that I had when I was a child, but I had one of the stories in like a big compilation and I always loved it. So I was very excited when I saw this in the op shop because it has 5 of them, and these are such cute stories about these toys that have adventures. The original Toy Story, one might say. Anyway, on the back, it just has a cute illustration from one of the stories of the little bear hugging the older bear. And I think it's really cute, and it very much summarizes the vibe of the stories, especially because there's one where the small bear gets lost. That's probably from that story where they found him. Next is best chapter headers, and I have another children's book. This is The Lives of Christopher Chant by Diana Wynne-Jones, but I could have picked any Diana Wynne-Jones that I have in this series because these all have amazing illustrations as the chapter headers. I don't think there's any other illustrations inside the chapters. It is all just the chapter headers. These are such a big part of all these stories, and they all relate to something happening in the chapter. Diana Wynne-Jones's books are very weird, and the only ones I really like are the Howl's Moving Castle series and the Chrestomanci series. I think because they're kind of a little more down to earth than some of her other books, even though they are about magic. The next question is best spine. I actually picked this one called High Sobriety by Jill Stark, which also has a great cover. The spine is basically the cover in a small version. This would also have been good for great font because I love the way that the font has been incorporated into the shape of a beer bottle. This is a book that I actually read from the library and then I found this in an op shop. It's about a journalist who gave up alcohol for a whole year and the huge impact it had on her life. And I found it really fascinating as someone who doesn't drink to see the experience of someone who did drink quite a lot and who gave it up entirely for multiple reasons. We then have best illustration, and there's so many Penguin classics in my collection that I have to choose from in terms of illustrations. I don't know if paintings count as illustrations, but I'm going to make them count. I love old paintings on books because it's another way of evoking the era through the art that existed then, as well as the story. Not that all of the art on the front of the Penguin Classics necessarily comes from the exact period of time that the book is set, but this is one of my favorites, Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I love the snowy landscape with the sheep because it is exactly like some of the scenes in the book. I'm very sad that there's a chip in this one because I did read this on the bus and put it in my bag and destroyed it slightly, but I do love this book, and the other Thomas Hardys I have in this sort of box set that I have are also very pretty. And lastly is best cover, and I'm now not sure about this choice, but I kind of picked it because it's so weird, I think. This is Howard's End by Ian Forster, and it's a Penguin Classics, the sort of modern silver ones that they use for like more modern classics, even though this is from the Edwardian era. I found this in an op shop with no idea of what the book was about, and then read it and loved it so much, even though I had heard of Ian Forster before. And I just think it's such a random cover because it's such a famous classic, but it truly looks like someone just went out to an English house and opened the door and took a photo. And I love that because although this book is about so much, at its heart, Howard's End is this beautiful house with a beautiful garden, and it's what the main character longs for throughout the book. It feels like it's kind of the reason she marries the guy that she does. It's a little bit like Pride and Prejudice in that way. And it's so scrappy, and it's just, I think, an example of the sort of paperback classic that I love finding in op shops, and just discovering a new favourite book that way is so wonderful. So that's the end of the tag. Thank you so much, Yana, for tagging me. I'm going to tag Anya from Anya's Bell Jar because I'm sure she has an amazing collection of classics as well, and I would love to see her takes on these questions. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!